Things First is sponsored by Ram Trucks, built to serve.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf alongside Nick Wright, Kevin Wildes, Greg Jennings with us this morning. Gentlemen, we got a lot to get to today. Tom Brady finally opening up about why he left New England, when he knew, and who he likes to throw the ball to. That's where we start this morning. The rewarding performance sponsored by Capital One Venture Card. What's in your wallet? Here we go. Tom Brady opening up to Howard Stern yesterday in an interview that shed some light on a lot of unanswered questions, the biggest one being Brady's departure from the Patriots. Why he decided to leave when he decided to leave. Brady said, I don't think there was a final decision until it happened. But I would say I probably knew before the start of last season that it was my last year. I knew our time was coming to an end. Nick, what did you make of Brady's comment?
It's a stunning admission, even if it just confirms what some of us speculated throughout the season. And even though those of us who speculated it were shouted down by other colleagues or certainly Patriot fans. Think about what Tom Brady is saying. He is saying in August of 2019, he basically knew his time as a Patriot, the greatest run for any player with any one team in the history of sports, arguably, that there was an expiration date on it, that it was coming to a close. And think about the previous 30 months to that realization, what he had accomplished, and that it still wasn't enough for his coach, for his organization, to give him what he wanted in the contract extension. February of 2017, Tom Brady leads the greatest Super Bowl comeback ever, sets the record for passing yards in a Super Bowl, and sets the record for Super Bowl wins by a quarterback. That's February of 2017. February of 2018, he wins league MVP. He breaks his own record for passing yards in a Super Bowl as the Patriots get to their second straight Super Bowl. February of 2019, just months before he comes to this realization, he leads a fourth quarter on-the-road comeback in the AFC Championship game. He goes back to another Super Bowl, their third straight, and they win their sixth championship. And 5 months later, he knows, I'm done here. They no longer want me here. You could argue the 30 months prior to him coming to this realization, Wildes, were the most successful 30 months of time any quarterback's ever had. And yet that wasn't enough for Bill Belichick to want to bring him back. I wondered if that was the case all year. I was stunned to hear Brady confirm that it in fact was, Kevin.
Yeah, Nick, you know, this was a radio interview, but it reminded me of a TV show. And that TV show is called Mythbusters. And the myth that was busted during the Howard Stern interview was that Bill Belichick somehow mismanaged the offensive personnel and put Brady in a spot where he couldn't succeed. All I kept on hearing, not enough weapons, not enough weapons. If you want to keep Brady, you've got to get more weapons on the team. And I think that was nonsense, and it never made any sense beginning all the way at last year's draft. Bill Belichick, first round, drafts N'Keal Harry. He has never drafted a wide receiver in the first round. In fact, the Patriots hadn't drafted a wide receiver in the first round since Terry Glenn was wearing throwback jerseys, and they were just called jerseys. Fast forward to week 2, Bill Belichick puts out a receiving core that between them have 20,000 yards and 125 some odd touchdowns. Antonio Brown, Josh Gordon, and Julian Edelman. And you know what? None of it matters. We beat the Dolphins 43-0, but Tom Brady's house was on the market a month before. So anyone talking about Belichick needed to add weapons, Tom Brady was on his Magic Johnson just being like, I'm not going to be here, Jenna.
No, but all those months of success prior that Nick laid out before he made this decision, and he still decided he was going to leave anyway. Greg, did the timing of this decision surprise you?
You know, it surprises us all, I believe, with the exception of Nick, because he called it and he feels like he was right from the jump. But I think it surprises us all as not only
He
as
loves
players, but as fans, because you see guys
where am I
you've been locked in for so long, forever in that uniform. And that's just not the case. That's not what we were able to see with Tom Brady. But I think for me, looking at how this all transpired and listening to this interview, man, there's so many things that personally I pulled out from it because of experiences. I just recall when I was in Green Bay and going into my last contract year, knowing I don't think that I'm going to be here. And players have this innate ability to really pay attention, guys. We do. We pay attention. And there's writing that is on the wall. And if you look at the writing that was on the wall with Tom, to make a decision. And so, yes, going into the season, he probably knew in his heart of hearts, I'm not going to be here. There's a strong chance I'm not going to be here. So what do I do now? I prepare everything around me, specifically myself and my family, for a change, a shift, something that may be abrupt to everyone around us, but we have been preparing for this the entire time because the writing.
So, Nick, you were on this very early on, coming off the prior success that he had. You still thought Tom Brady was going to leave. I know this didn't completely surprise you, but there was something there that made Tom Brady said, "Okay, now I'm done. I can't do this anymore." His mentality wasn't going to go into the season. I'm going to play, but this is it.
Jenna, it was that he realized that it is never going to be about what I have accomplished. It is only ever going to be about what they anticipate I will accomplish. And my track record of unprecedented success has bought me precisely nothing. Tom Brady came to this realization while he was the defending Super Bowl champion, the 3-time consecutive defending AFC champion, and the 10-time consecutive defending AFC East champion. Think about that. I don't know about you guys, but I spent last night rewatching, because it was rebroadcast, games 6 and 7 of the 2013, NBA Finals. That was the great Heat-Spurs series that went 7. Ray Allen shot in game 6. And it felt apropos to this discussion because Tim Duncan that year was first-team All-NBA, carried his team to the finals, and they lost. Similar to Brady, by the way, in 2017 when he won league MVP, but they lose in the Super Bowl. The very next year, Duncan was not quite as good. The team, though, was even better, and they won a championship. Similar to Brady in 2018 when they get back to the Super Bowl and they win it. Can you imagine if the following offseason Popovich was like, "Hey, Timmy, just want to let you know, we're going to let this contract play out, but then you're done. Don't need you, don't want you. If you want to play ball, you should try to do it elsewhere." We would have said, are you kidding me? That's Tim Duncan. But that is exactly what Belichick did with Brady. And I know people will say, well, it's what happened with Montana and Favre and Rodgers. Those are totally different situations. When the Packers moved on from Favre, he was a decade removed from the Super Bowl and from his last MVP. When the Niners moved on from Montana, he had played 1 game in the previous 2 years. When the Colts moved on from Manning, he was coming off major neck surgery. And all those guys had Hall of Fame level talents waiting in the wings. Brady was coming off as good of a 30 months as he had ever had, and they had Jared Stidham waiting in the wings, Wildes, and they still made this decision before we even saw him fall off the cliff this year. It maybe speaks to Belichick, Kevin, being able to see what's coming, but it has to be just a gut shot for Brady.
So I think that's fascinating, Nick, but one thing I didn't hear in the interview, and Greg, you tell me if you heard it, there didn't seem to be any animosity towards Belichick. In fact, Brady was like, I get it. I started to get into uncharted territory. It's his job as a coach to plan for the next chapter. And I was kind of like, he didn't know what's going to happen. I get it. That's his job. I was like, wow, there is such perspective and a vulnerability to Brady that he was admitting that I thought it was fascinating. And it didn't seem like he had any ill will towards Belichick at all, Jenna.
Greg, so that's interesting. Because yesterday we talked about the article he penned about how he felt angry and he didn't really talk about Bill Belichick at all and he moved on. I like that your takeaway was that you felt like he came at this interview in an easier spirit, sort of comfortable with his decision. But as a player, Greg, I wonder, what's your mentality going into the season when you already know that you're out, when you know that this is probably going to be your last season, or the guys that are playing with you? Do you think they look back and they say, oh, now I can kind of see and put pieces together, knowing that this might have been his last season? As a player, is that hard to reconcile?
It's a challenge because you got to think the game that we love to play is probably more mental than it is physical. We see the physical part of it and we become enamored with that. But there are so many mental pieces and mental games within the game that you have to play with yourself. And so having that literally be something that you have to compartmentalize every time you step on the football field, that being practice as well, and going into the locker room and going into meeting rooms and sitting in front of Coach Belichick and Robert Kraft, knowing in your heart of hearts, like, we're not moving forward beyond this, that is a challenge. And Brady was able to do it. And I think one of the words that I would throw out there that really stood out to me in this entire interview was his self-awareness. Tom Brady's self-awareness, I'm enamored at it. I'm in awe of it every time I listen to him communicate to us, because he never goes outside of what he understands it to be, the business. And when you hear him talk about his relationship with Bill Belichick and what he would have done if he were a coach, not that he's going to be a coach, but he would have been doing the same things. His ability to be so self-aware is something that players just do not do because they get so caught up in the moment of where they are and what they've done. And this league has taught us that, or people have said all the time, it's about what have you done for me lately? Nick, but you just said something that I wrote down. It's not only so about what have you done for me lately, it's also about what I believe as an owner, as a coach, that you can provide for me next. Because that's what's important. What you did is great, but it's going to also let me know what you can potentially offer me moving forward. And I think that's what Bill Belichick did not see from Tom Brady, what he could offer this team moving forward.
And I think that's clearly the case, Greg, and it's a great point. And Wildes, you're absolutely right, and I'll be quick here, and I want to be fair, though, that Brady was as magnanimous as one could possibly be. But he would have to have a Dalai Lama level of internal peace to not have been hurt by this.
He does.
Because he clearly believes Belichick's wrong. He clearly believes he can still play, that he can still be a championship-level quarterback. And, Jenna, I do think this gives us a window into some of his frustration early in the year. If you remember, Al Michaels said, Tom Brady, the most the manner in which they were winning. But when he knows you guys are getting rid of me after this year, and he didn't feel he had the weapons around him, he didn't feel the game plan was one set up to really exhibit his strengths as much as the defense, I think there was some anger and bitterness, at least at the time. Maybe he's gotten over it, or maybe he's a great actor and he's just trying to be the ultimate teammate. But, Jen, I would think it's impossible for him not to be at least wounded by what's happened over the last 9 months, Jenna.
Contrary to popular belief, he is actually human. We're going to dig a little deeper into this interview coming up later in the show. But on the other side, why is Jameis Winston honored to be replaced by the GOAT? Next on First Things First.